Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
911, what's your emergency?
On this season of Killer Relationship, devotion becomes deadly.
They got together and hit it off from the second they met. She fell in love with him hard. They were going to be together forever.
They were your typical all-American couple. They really loved each other.
My grandfather, he was such a loving person. Why would someone want him dead?
He was killed by the person who was supposed to love him the most and should have appreciated him the most.
Almost survived a shotgun shell to the back of the head at point blank range.
My sister's missing. Where is she?
I could clearly see her body. It was badly burned. Appeared to be a female, pregnant.
I love him with my whole heart.
KFI AM 640. It's Later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Faith Jenkins, former criminal prosecutor at the Manhattan DA's office, explores the heart-stopping details of murders traced back to romantic liaisons and close friendships that seemed perfect, at least on the surface. Such sets the stage for the new third season of Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins on NBC's Oxygen channel and Peacock's streaming app. Killer Relationship examines murder cases that began with romantic relationships or close friendships that tragically went awry. Joining me now is its host and executive producer, Ms. Faith Jenkins. Faith, a pleasure to finally meet you and speak with you. How are you this evening?
I'm great. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction, Mo. I need you to come on the road with me. that was very compelling.
Well, don't promise me a good time. You have litigated Wall Street cases, family court, and all sorts of disputes in between. What has your law career taught you about human nature?
I think it's taught me that the human experience is very intriguing, and I'm always looking to gain insight into the human mind and find out why people make the decisions that they make. And what I found is it's for different reasons. People have secrets. They don't want to be exposed. They have issues with insecurity, jealousy, greed. And you know what's so interesting, Mo? Most of us can relate to having a relationship in our life in one way or another, whether it's a significant other, a family, or a friend. And most of us can relate to a relationship not working out. For the most part, people are able to go their separate ways. We all cope differently with a relationship ending. But why is it, and this is the question I think the show answers, why is it that in some cases people feel that someone else has to die?
Why do people go from I do to I hope you die? And we find that out in Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins. But let me ask you another adjacent question. You're a litigator. You're an executive producer and host. You have to keep emotional distance from victims or clients and their families. But when putting a show together like this, what's the key to remaining passionate about the subject matter, but dispassionate in your approach?
That's a great question. There are a couple of things. One, we don't do any cases on the show without the blessing of the family. And I want listeners to know that, because for me, what makes it all worthwhile is being able to tell these people's story and knowing that we're sharing a story, that their legacy is not their murder. It's not how they died, it's how they lived. So that's the emotional aspect that because I'm still human. I've had all these cases and I've heard a lot of things throughout my career, but I'm still human. So there's always going to be a level of compassion and empathy there. And I address that in a way, though, with connecting with these families and allowing them to share their loved one's story. The other side of me, the investigator, the trained investigator, the former prosecutor, I want people to know how these crimes are solved, because people always think they're going to get away with it. They plan it hoping and thinking that they're going to get away with it. There's a level of investigation involved in these cases on this series, because we always choose cases, it is television, where the perpetrator isn't caught right away. And there has to be a level of investigation, and we take viewers through that level of investigation. And that's the bread and butter, I think, that makes shows like this work, because you see the beginning, who the person is, the victim, their family. You see this investigation, and in the end, you have some semblance of justice being served. You can never have true justice because someone's life is gone, but you can have accountability.
You've been telling us in a general sense about what we should expect in this new season of Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins. But on the other side of telling these stories, which have been endorsed, if you will, by the family, does the family, from what you've seen, find a measure of closure or satisfaction from getting the whole story out there?
You know, families have different reactions, but some families don't want to be on TV. They don't want to share the story, and we respect that. You know, we accept that, and we move on to the next case that we want to pursue, because we spend months researching what cases we want to do and narrowing down to 13. But for the families who do want to be on the show, I think it helps to talk about their loved one, to talk about the life that they live, because these are not celebrity cases. These are not people whose lives were in the spotlight. They live pretty quiet, normal lives, everyday people. So for a lot of them, it's the first time that they get to talk about their family member on a national and international scale and talk about who they were. So for a lot of them, it's a part of, I think, their grieving and their healing process, which is ongoing as they go through the significant impact of losing their loved one and what that means.
You have investigated and covered and shared any number of cases related to Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins. Have you noticed along the way or subsequently any common threads which takes a bad breakup and turns it violent or deadly?
I think that I've noticed a pattern of people who have secrets. And when they think those secrets are about to be exposed, people react very differently to that. Some people will go through great lengths to keep their secret a secret. So I've noticed that as a pattern. I've noticed that the pressures of life, when you start having children, when there's financial pressure and you have all of these things piling on, there's the show called Snapped. It's called Snapped for a reason. Some people, because, I mean, our premiere episode, we're talking about teachers. One is a high school teacher. One is a professor. Not so much even as a traffic ticket. And all of a sudden, you have this premeditated, planned for months homicide taking place. And it's so shocking to the community. So there are some where, you know, it's just a matter of time before this ticking time bomb just goes off.
In the beginning of our conversation, you alluded to the fact, and I'm paraphrasing, that you're human like the rest of us. Paraphrasing. I wonder, though, and this is just between you and me, nobody's listening. It's not like you're on the #1 news talk station in America. I'm not. No. But, you know, if you were to...
We'll keep this amongst ourselves.
Right. Do you... Because of this show specifically, do you ever look at your own friendships or family circle just a little bit differently and maybe say, I wonder if that is a clue or possibly an indicator of something else? Do you look at your own relationships differently?
Oh, I think that once I started prosecuting cases, I think I looked at everyone differently. And, you know, I have an 18-month-old daughter, and my husband tells me all the time, I don't trust, because we have to hire nannies and babysitters. And he tells me I have trust issues. I said, I know I do. I work in crime. I've been working in crime, for 15 years now. So I tell him, I look at everything that people do. I just see the world in a different way. So I will admit that I am sort of like constantly looking for these red flags for better or worse. But I actually think it's a good thing, because as you go through life and you have these experiences, what I've seen from and I've heard from people through the years is, wow, you know what? I didn't think this was a red flag, but now looking back, I should have caught this. And so when you've heard that so many times, Mo, throughout the course of your career, it's like I've compiled a list in my own head. And I just sort of go through life now with a different lens of how I see people in the world.
Well, your husband, Kenny Lattimore, he better sleep with one eye open. Season 3 of Killer Relationship with Faith Jenkins on NBC's True Crime Network, Oxygen, and the Peacock streaming app. Faith Jenkins, thank you so much for coming on. It's the first time we had a chance to talk, and I hope won't be the last.
Thank you so much.
It's Later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
The NBA on TNT, and we have been following the story of how TNT was desperately trying to hang on to the NBA television rights because TNT had the most popular broadcast analysis show in all of sports. TNT's Inside the NBA with Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, Kenny Smith, and Ernie Johnson. It's hilarious. If you have any familiarity with NBA basketball, it was the gold standard for shows. You had knowledgeable people. You had all sorts of humor. It was kind of like the barbershop just talking about basketball. But with the recent rights deal in which NBA and I think it's, the Walt Disney Company and Amazon Prime, and when I say Walt Disney Company, that means ESPN, they will have the rights to all the NBA games, which left a lot of NBA fans in panic because that meant TNT would not be televising any of the games. And there was they were afraid that Inside the NBA would no longer exist. There were some overtures made to members of the Inside the NBA team, including Charles Barkley, to come over to NBC and reprise that show just on a different network. Charles Barkley, in an interview with sports personality Dan Le Batard, said that he left a minimum of $100 million on the table by staying with TNT. Now, I want you to listen to what he says, and then I'll give you my thoughts about what he had to say on the other side.
But the number one thing for me is my people at Turner get to keep their jobs for at least another year. That's all I was concerned with.
Charles, how much money do you think that you left on the table in making that decision concerned about others?
A minimum of $100 million.
Jeez.
A minimum.
Man. Yeah, because I imagine it was a lot of fun to be you recently, right? In free agency, that had to feel good even as you're thinking to yourself in these meetings, because I talked to you a little bit at least. You're like, I'm not.
Yeah, 100%. It was a great feeling. And I want to thank all those networks for reaching out to me. It was really humbling and cool. It was really humbling and cool, to be honest with you. I wasn't even like I said, Dan, even though they were throwing crazy numbers, I was like, damn. Yeah, but as long as I got my people safe at TNT, man, I feel really good. Like I say, they're going to pay me to go and talk about nothing, so I can't look a give horse in the mouth.
Before we
Hey, Dan, I probably would have had to do an honest day's work if I went to one of those other networks.
We've had Charles Barkley on this show. I don't disagree with what he's saying, but I am going to disagree with some aspects of what he's saying. He said that he left about $100 million on the table because he would not go to NBC. And he wanted to make sure that people at TNT Sports had their jobs for at least another year. There was nothing preventing him, from what I could understand, since he had that type of leverage, to take a lot of people with him or have some sort of stipulation and some sort of parachute for the people who would have remained at TNT. Because if you know anything about this business, there's still no guarantee for the people at TNT. Why? Because TNT Sports just lost their golden goose to the NBA. So there's not going to be an Inside the NBA show, which is going to be produced through TNT. So there's nothing guarding against those jobs going away anyway. So I'm thinking, if I'm Charles Barkley and I have leverage, it's like, you want me to come to NBC and you're going to pay me all this money? How about you pay me a little bit less, and then I get to bring over 10 or 11 people with me? Because when I say with me, I assume NBC Sports they're going to do it out of New York. TNT was done out of Atlanta. So there's some relocation costs and logistics, which are probably woven into that. Am I reading this wrong, Mark? Because I think, like, if you have that much money they're willing to throw at you, that you're in the driver's seat. You can start dictating a few things.
I suppose, but the first thing that occurred to me, and you actually know a lot more about this than me because I don't follow sports, but how refreshing for somebody who thought, I have enough. I don't need this. I can afford to do the decent thing here. The other thing here in what you just said, moving to Atlanta. How you can't put a price tag on how miserable that'd be.
Well, see, the thing is, they're based in Atlanta, but they would probably have to move to New York. TNT is based in Atlanta. The jobs, I'm assuming, are in Atlanta that he's trying to save.
Okay, I almost had to move to New York for a job a long time ago with Comedy Central, believe it or not. There's another one to add to your trivia. I would do that 100 times before I would move to Atlanta, and I have been to Atlanta.
See, I've been to both, and I think the living difficulties of New York are much more difficult than Atlanta. And Elmer, please jump in. I know the cost of living is 3 times that of Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, no, I've lived in Georgia and New York, so both pros and cons. Cheaper rent in Atlanta, but less to do and more driving.
Barkley doesn't have to worry about that, though.
No, Barkley doesn't. But if we're just talking about saving jobs, staying at TNT, I don't know if it saved any jobs. It might have given them, to his point, an extra year, but it's for a show which doesn't exist anymore. So is he really saving jobs? Like if because TNT Sports was predicated on the NBA, and TNT Sports doesn't have the NBA anymore, which says to me they're probably going to clean house unless they have another major sports rights deal that I don't know about.
Your cynicism is killing me here.
No, it's not cynicism. I've just been in this business long enough where going back to your altruism. Now that TNT doesn't have an NBA league to promote, what's the point of holding on to these jobs? And I think TNT is going to go TNT, as most corporations would, and start cutting jobs regardless, because they're not producing any of these shows anymore, which were major cash cows for the network.
You may very well be right about all that. It's just, again, it's so refreshing. We've become such pigs. It's just refreshing for somebody you run across in the news who doesn't try and get everything they can no matter what, ostensibly for a decent reason. However it pans out, you may fully be right.
No, I agree with you. It's almost like you're driving down the street and you see a dog in the road and you're nice enough to slow down and drive around it, but the next a-hole behind you is not most likely going to slow down. They're just going to run the dog down.
Yeah, and that's their choice, but you can still be a decent person and go home and live with yourself and look at yourself in the mirror. So we don't have a lot of examples like this currently.
Well, and that's from the guy who said that he's not a role model. Do you remember that?
You?
No. And Charles Barkley, he was known for this commercial. He actually got a lot of pushback because he said that he was not a role model. Elmer's going to look it up. We'll play it in the next segment.
I do remember that, and I am 100% against the entire concept of the so-called sports hero. I think it's a contradiction in terms.
Well, we'll play it on the other side. It's later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640 live, everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
We're going to talk about Rachel Raygun in just a moment and the future of breakdancing. But I want to go back to last segment. We're talking about Charles Barkley, how, to Mark Ronner's credit, he acknowledged that Charles Barkley was doing something which was very unselfish, not leaving TNT because he wanted to make sure that he protected as best he could the jobs of people who worked with him and for him and around him at TNT. And I was saying that was very much a role model-esque thing to do, which harkens back to his commercial where he was roundly criticized for saying in it, and this was like in the, I want to say early 1990s, where he is not a role model.
I am not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. I am paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. Parents should be role models. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I should raise your kids.
Nike commercial. I didn't think it was all that controversial, but it was back in the day. You know, it's a commercial. He's selling shoes. He's not preaching in the pulpit, but that was the reference point, the cultural reference point, Mark.
I remember that, yeah, and it was a relief, honestly, because how many times have we found sports celebrities who were allegedly heroes to be just rotten people?
I fall somewhere in between. He may not be a role model, but a sports figure is a public figure, I think has a higher responsibility to not be irresponsible and at least acknowledge that they wield undue influence. Not raising kids, but as far as what kids will emulate. That's all I'm saying.
I suppose you're right, but there's just nothing inherently to me about somebody who excels at any athletic thing that makes them morally or otherwise superior to anybody unless they prove in their behavior that they are.
Yeah, Yeah, I just think that when you are someone in entertainment and little kids look up to you literally and also socially, I think that you do have a higher responsibility than the average person because you have a wider sphere of influence.
Well, you could say that about anybody, couldn't you? An actor, politician,
yes.
Anybody who's a
yes.
public person.
Yes.
And we're always disappointed.
No, disappointed is one thing.
I'm waiting for a big scandal to come out about you.
Oh, there are plenty. Just keep on waiting.
Yeah.
No, my point is, I don't need someone to be a moralist. I'm not a moralist. I'm not saying you need to do this and be above moral reproach. I am saying that, let's say me sitting in this chair, I am aware that I have a higher responsibility than the person who doesn't have a microphone and the ability to speak to 100,000 people at a time. I cannot be, and I should not be, careless in the way that a person in their private conversation can be careless. That's all I'm saying. I call it respecting the mic, but you can respect the mic in other ways in different fields.
Well, there's a pragmatic aspect to that as well. Anybody, like you and I have had public jobs our entire adult careers, and you just have to keep your nose clean because you're going to get reported on in a way that just a private person wouldn't. It's just a matter of being pragmatic and knowing that you're going to get busted like other people aren't.
Well, there's that. I mean, that's self-preservation, but also I'm mindful. Like, for example, there's nothing I'm going to say on the show that I would be embarrassed to have my mother listen to or a child. You know, I'm mindful of that. That's and other people say, like, well, why would you worry about that? No, I think that I have a larger responsibility, not great power, great responsibility. I'm just saying that when you have something as powerful as Mike or celebrity, I'm not talking about me, I'm just saying in general. Yeah, I think you are rightfully held to a higher standard.
Oh, I agree with that. And I get in more conversations behind the scenes than even you know about the responsibility of sending things out over the public airwaves. You know how apoplectic I get about disinformation and stuff like that.
Same thing. I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, but sports heroes, that's a whole different bag to me. I mean, I've said I don't follow sports, but I've covered sports things, and a lot of athletes are just thugs.
I don't know about that.
And I don't mean that there's no baggage that comes with that word. I just mean,
I'm just saying, there's behavior as an emulation, and there is the self-acknowledgement that I, as a public person who may dribble a basketball and make $20 million a year, I know that little kids want to grow up and be like me. And my movements, my words, my behavior is going to have a disproportionate impact on those kids than the teacher in the classroom. It's not fair, but it's a fact.
No, but I realized you probably have always wanted your face on a Wheaties box, haven't you?
Nope.
I don't believe that because you've made references to wanting buildings named after you.
There's a big difference.
A Wheaties box is even a step down from that. Come on now.
Wheaties box is reserved for athletes. Name on the building, reserved for legends.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Point of clarification.
Yeah. Let's talk about Raygun real quick. Well, we can carry her over into the next segment. Raygun, Rachel Gunn, the Australian breakdancer, air quotes, who represented Australia at the Olympics. She's received both hate and praise coming out of the Olympics. Hate because some people think that she culturally misappropriated the whole breakdancing persona. It's not who she is. She hasn't lived it. She doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand its roots. And she's profiting for, and I want to use, this is the word I use, for cosplaying, for playing a role, being the worst breakdancer at the Olympics. There have been some questions and debates about her qualifying as the best breakdancer in Australia. And now she's on the precipice of monetizing it to the tune of $1 million, if you believe what the New York Post has said. They said that she will probably gain millions in endorsements from big tech, gambling companies, sports apparel, and so forth.
Is she an athlete?
No. She is a clown that has made a mockery of a decades-old art form that comes from the inner city that was a form of representation, and that eventually became heralded as a true dance form and recognized by the world. And when it finally got its opportunity to get on the world stage, she got up there and did the damn lawnmower. She is a clown.
What is the lawnmower?
Were you just rolling around on the ground?
That's the lawnmower?
And also did the sprinkler.
It's one of these times where you wish radio was more of a visual medium.
And the kangaroo.
I mean, just literally. I mean,
too.
Yeah, it was clownish behavior, and you're rewarding clownish behavior for someone who obviously has no real connection to the different elements of hip hop, breakdancing being one. Now, I don't care if has a PhD in dance or whatever. She is profiting off of cosplaying, and I think that's part of the reason why it's so distasteful for some. In fact, she got on Instagram and complained about all the hate she received. I wouldn't want anyone to be disrespectful to her or her family, but I damn sure I'm going to call it for what it is, and she's cosplaying and profiting.
Hi everyone, Raygun here. I just want to start by thanking all the people who have supported me. I really appreciate the positivity, and I'm glad I was able to bring some joy into your lives. That's what I hoped. I didn't realize that would also open the door to so much hate, which has frankly been pretty devastating. Well, I went out there and I had fun. I did take it very seriously. I worked my butt off preparing for the Olympics, and I gave my all, truly. I'm honoured to have been a part of the Australian Olympic team and to be part of breaking's Olympic debut. What the other athletes have achieved has just been phenomenal.
Okay, I can't listen anymore. Also, we got to go to break. But the bottom line is, I don't care how hard she tried. I don't care how proud she is. She obviously does not understand the whole point of breaking. I don't care that she's even white. It's not that. It's about not understanding the whole point of breakdancing. And what she did on stage was disrespectful and mocked what actual breakdancing was. She had no business being on the same stage with actual breakdancers.
Oh, I got to read between the lines here a little bit, but I'm guessing that she did not, in fact, bring joy to your life.
Not at all.
Literally, she is a step above the Hawk 2 girl.
Whoa!
Literally.
Look at
she might as well put out a sex tape. Literally, Raygun is trash.
Hawk 2 and spit on that thing, you get me?
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Okay, before we get out of here, let's finish up with Raygun, the so-called breakdancer who's on the precipice of making millions. I call this the William Hung effect. Remember William Hung? He tried out for American Idol. He was laughed at. He really had no business trying out because he's not a singer, and there was no chance of him actually being legitimately on the show. But I would make one differentiation. William Hung eventually became self-aware. I think he realized, okay, they're laughing at me, not with me, but I'm going to make the most of it, and he did. Raygun actually thinks that she is a legitimate breakdancer. She is not. And name another athlete in the Olympics which is going to make millions of dollars for coming in absolute last. And not all the sports are comparable, but in breaking, you are paired up. You had a round robin tournament, and you went out against each competitor, and you were judged round by round. She lost every round. She did not get 1 point. She could not have done any worse than what she did, and she's going to make millions, which says to me it's a mockery.
But isn't it kind of like the Jamaican bobsled thing, in the sense that it's people, a team or a competitor who you wouldn't expect them to be in this particular event, but it's the novelty and just the overall silliness of it. And by the way, Tuala compared her to the Hawk Tua girl. You watch your P's and Q's here, because there's going to be a Hawk Tua event in the 2028 games.
Let me take that. Then you take it, Tuala. The Jamaican bobsled team, they got a story told about them. They got a movie made about them. But you can't name any of them. They did not make the type of money that we're talking about here. That is one huge difference. And also, I believe that they were earnest in their attempts at bobsledding, even though they were horrible. I don't believe that she's earnest in her attempts.
Eddie the Eagle, remember him?
Yeah, Eddie the Eagle. He has 15 minutes of fame. I'm not against 15 minutes of fame, but they're not, and part of this is social media, but they did not receive the type of trappings that, I almost cussed, Raygun is receiving.
Yeah, no, seriously, the reason why this is created such ire among those who grew up with watching, being around, and knowing individuals who actually are real breakers is that this is someone who, from all appearances, did not take it serious then or now. This is someone who manipulated the entire competition to get on. There is no way in hell she should have been on that stage, and to go up there and do what she did, it's almost as if this should not be here, so I'm not going to take it serious. I'm up here clowning.
I'm having fun.
I'm having fun, when there are actual people who this is how they make their living. This is a real art form to them. No, you're not going to have someone go up and enter a painting contest against Van Gogh doing, Crayola watercolors. Finger painting. You're just not.
Not someone to pull their ears.
All right, we got to get out of here, but I got to let you know. KFI is sending you and a friend to Las Vegas for the 2024 iHeartRadio Music Festival, presented by Capital One, September 20th and 21st at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. 2 nights, 1 stage. Great fun. You'll see live performances by Dua Lipa, Doja Cat, Gwen Stefani, Keith Urban, and many more. You better get your tickets now. You can buy them at AXS.com. Get them now because it's going to be sold out. But keep on listening to KFI for your chance to win 2 tickets to both nights of the festival, a 2-night hotel stay at the MGM Resorts destination, and a $200 gas card to get you there and back. Show off your pool side, your backside, whatever side, but only with MGM Rewards. Visit MGMRewards.com for details. We'll see you tomorrow, and we will be playing Name That Movie Called Classic. KFI AM 640, live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
KFI is literally the KFI of talk radio. KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere.